All right, let's talk making weight.
Yeah.
So I want to start with why. Obviously, if we're talking powerlifting, it's a weight class sport, so you've got to make weight. But is that all you're interested in when it comes to making weight, or are you always looking to reduce people's weight within a?
So when it comes to powerlifting, yes, obviously there is weight classes. Now, my initial thinking with clients or athletes who first start out in powerlifting is to not worry about weight class or making weight.
Right.
It should be the last thing you think about, because your priorities is to get stronger.
Yeah.
Now, this is more so especially for your very first competition. You get a first competition and it's like, cool. They'll immediately look at the weight classes and then think, oh, I'll best fit in that one. They always want to pick the one under because I think, oh, I can lose weight and get stronger.
Yeah.
Or it's like, I'll be more competitive in there or whatever it is. And it's like, so when I first get someone to compete, it's normally just about competing, getting stronger. There's already so many variables to take into account. You're already going to make so many mistakes in your first competition. You're best trying to make it as easy as possible. Enjoy the process. Enjoy getting some personal bests and get them to fall in love with that process and getting stronger. Choosing a class because you think it's more competitive when you're probably not competitive and not going to be in any class for some time. The only way you're going to get competitive is get good at competing.
Yeah.
You know, I made a post about this the other day. It's like, don't wait till you're competitive to compete to get competitive.
Because it's a skill to learn, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not going to go through all the learning process and you're not going to take yourself to the level without a form of, that competitiveness. And then you don't have something to compare against competition to competition. And then you learn all the variables that you have in there. Now, there are some cases you might cut down for the first individual, and there might be someone who's, looking to get stronger and is overweight. It really just depends on their goal. So when people say, I want to make this weight class, I remove that conversation. The first thing I ask them is like, why are you doing the competition? It's like, it's usually like, oh, I want to get stronger. I want to hit some PBs. It's like, then that is what we're going to do. Okay. Now, if on the other hand, they have a body composition goal, then we'll focus on body composition changes and not worry about making a weight class.
Yeah.
So if it's, someone who is, say, 12 weeks out from comp weighs 66, 67 kilos and wants to get down to the 60 kilo class, it's like, and we only have 12 weeks. It's like, that's 10% body weight over 12 weeks. It's going to be, just under 1% a week right up until the day of competition. Now, for someone who hasn't done a competition at all, that's going to be a lot of variables put in place. You're going to feel tired, exhausted. You probably will get stronger and stuff, but you haven't learned all the good things about training because it's only going to feel shit.
Yeah.
So we'll focus on changes in body composition to improve their body composition, but not focused on trying to make a weight class.
Yeah.
So this is just removing the why and desire behind a weight class. And if it is about because they want to look better or be more competitive, but sometimes it's more about just being stronger and looking better, which is most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just look better and be stronger.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So go into whatever weight class you're in and just try to look better. So it's just reframing their thinking and understanding why they came. So this is another topic. It's just like, finding the whys behind people's goals. So if someone comes to you with a goal, the goal is for us is to find the why, and then there's your motivation. So the why of the why of the why tells you exactly why that person is doing it. And then you can come up with a better goal because you as the consultant or the coach needs to find the right solution for the exact problem or the right problem that they have. Because their solution, most clients will come up with their own solution to their problem. We've got to find the problem to come up with a better solution.
Right.
And that's usually the start when an individual with a weight class or weight cut. Now, let's say over time we're improving. Now, we have one competitor now. She's coming to a second competition. Right. Most of the time we had her on a maintenance diet. Okay. And so But with the maintenance diet, she was also losing. So it's probably the tiniest deficit because she was losing like 1 kilo a month. But it had been like, say, 8 months. And now she's like, it's gotten to a position where it's like, 75 could be close enough. So it's like, it's not very low detriment to her performance progress.
Yeah.
She didn't really have a specific goal for weight loss, but now that we're there, it's fitting in with just with what she wants and still being able to compete to get stronger.
Yeah.
Okay. So, that's now say level 2 of intensity,
Yeah.
So now we look at individuals who are highly competitive.
Right. Yeah. So we're talking elite now, right?
Yeah. So there are multiple ways to do it. The number one best way to do it is to diet, feed into a competition.
Right.
Okay. So that way you walk into the competition as well fed as possible to then maximize performance. Now, there are a couple of ways to do this. So you can, depending on the time we have with it, is that you can diet down months in advance. This is probably the best way.
Yeah. Okay.
Diet down months in advance, and then you eat up into it for 2 to 3 months. So if you're in a 90 kilo class, cut down to 85, then eat back up.
And do you, when you're obviously doing your prep with the athletes, do you just go off the weight class that they naturally fall into, or do you actually sit down with them and go, okay, maybe we should look at long term going down weight class, going up a weight class? Do you?
It depends on their competitive goals.
Right.
In general, when you get to the high level competition, let's say look at the women.
Yep.
75 kilo class is the king class. That's the class you get the big invites in. That's the class with the most competitive females. So 75 kilo class, if they're heavier, they're normally dieting down to 75s.
Right.
Then the next most competitive class is around the 60s. So usually those are the two most competitive classes in the lightweight division, middleweight division. And so it may be dictated based off that or what they want to get out of it long term, or just sync it up with their long-term goals that I might just fit better in the 75 or 67s because it better fits my body type. It just really depends how in sync it is with their competitive goals or body composition goals. But let's talk about the most elite of elite. Okay. They're going to go into the classes usually, especially when you get to invite level competitions.
Yep.
Pro Raw being probably the main one here in Australia, is that it's very specific weight classes. And so people will spend their whole year making sure that they're going to be able to make that weight class. But let's just get about making weight classes.
Yeah.
Okay, because that in itself, by determining people's goals, and finding the best solution for it is another topic.
Yes, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
so let's just go into deciding the methods behind making weight for a competition. Okay. So if everything aligns with what is the best decision for that athlete to be competitive for an elite lifter, then number one best way to do it is you diet over time, competition to competition, to get closer and closer to that weight.
Yep.
Number two, if you're going to make it for a specific weight class by a certain time frame, then we would diet in the earlier seasons so that you have time to eat more at a maintenance or a slight slow pass, so that we're able to get the most out of the hardest training period.
Yeah.
Number two is that you dial it in. You can dial in a weight class if they don't have as much weight or as a more refined timeline. Then you would diet right as close as you can to the competition, and then have a short refeed period.
Right.
So we've got one competitor doing that right now. She's gone from about 77, 78 kilos we gone from states to nationals. So to get down to the 75 kilo class, we're going to try the best approach possible, which was, so the first approach we took for state championships is that we dieted right down. We dieted really hard because she was at 76 kilos.
Yep.
So instead of doing a water cut, we thought we'd say, okay, the best approach here is to diet down to 72. So we did a rapid loss after. So just before she started testing, we tapered the diet down, keep it at a point where she can still do her training. Then we did a rapid drop,
Right.
a really hard cut, drop 2-3 kilos pretty quickly, then refeed back into it. And so that she hits 75, just under 75 kilos on weigh-in day, and then still has another day to get back to her original,
Right, of course.
original weight. And that usually yields pretty good results because you get a really good supercompensation effect from the diet.
Yep.
So there's the short refeed period. There's a longer refeed period, which is, I would find, probably the most superior method we're doing. That's one of the methods we're doing with Sarah Rainbow right now.
Okay.
Is that we did a 12 to 16 week refeed period. She doesn't have a weight class to really worry about. She just competes in the super heavies.
Yeah.
But we use it to take advantage of the compensation effect she gets from a long period of dieting. And so from that, if you've been following, and if anyone else is following, she has gotten crazy strong in the last 3 months, and that's not by accident; it's all by design, and that's manipulating the body weight, manipulating diet to get that effect.
So the just to clear up, has the super compensation lasted 3 months? Is that what you're saying? Because the refeed's that long?
You can extend it by having a progressive refeed over time, and then during that period, she compensates with extra strength gains.
Right.
Eventually, that effect wears off. So her ability. So with diet, it works a little bit differently. You have the ability to store greater glycogen stores for for about a month or two. It's most sensitive in its earlier stages, the first 2 weeks or so. So you usually get a huge rebound in strength. So we utilize that period, but then we also just utilize being in a surplus whilst taking the advantage of her being at a lighter body weight. Her being at a heavy body weight was a disadvantage mainly for her deadlift. So
How so?
changes in leverages doesn't give you the ability to. Main thing is usually people's stomach gets in the way with their ability to keep the bar as close to their body as possible.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
So usually deadlift increases with weight loss. Usually because it changes their leverages.
Right. Okay.
My deadlift I've lost 8 kilos so far, and my deadlift has only improved.
God, that's really interesting. Okay.
So that takes advantages of her leverages. Now, the last method is doing water cuts.
Right, and this is the most controversial one. I mean, most people have seen like boxers on exercise bikes in saunas and all that kind of shit, and nearly killing themselves.
The problem with this is that it should only be reserved for very specific reasons. One, it's done because an athlete was lazy to do a proper diet plan.
So it's last resort. Yeah.
Last resort, they're just lazy to do it, and they have to make a weight class because they may have committed to that weight class. And in some competitions, you can't change weight class.
Right.
So they've already been invited to that class because they competed at that weight class before, and so they just got lazy. Number two is very highly competitive individual who wants to fit into a really, really low weight class to try and take something that is big.
Right.
So I did this with a lifter I've done heaps of water cuts with people, but there's one that stands out the most. I did about 5-6 years ago, and we did a mixture of all of them. We lost 17 kilos for a competition in about 16 weeks. I think it was like 12 weeks. It's a short period of time.
Wow. Yeah.
So we dieted, right? Then we lost as much as we can. So we lost about 7 kilos. We were trying to get down. He was 107, wanting to get down to 90.
Right.
And he wanted to break the all-time squat record for the 90 kilo class, which was 365 kilos.
Right.
So we dieted down, lost 7 kilos in a short period of time. And then, actually, no, we lost that over, I think we must have lost over 7 or so. I can't remember because it's quite a long time ago. Then we had to start so I think that we did that up until about 2 weeks out. I think we lost about 8 kilos. I remember getting to about 99 kilos in the diet. And he got pretty lean by then. So by that stage, he was like abs and he was lean. So we still had another 9 kilos to go, 10% in body weight. Now there's levels of weight loss that we consider certain percentages of weight loss, either, safe to the point getting too dangerous. 10% gets to the dangerous end. And we had 10% to do. So you have to manipulate every possible variable that manipulates your body weight. So we usually start 2 weeks out. The water cut process starts about 2 weeks out. So what you want to do is you want the body to naturally lose as much weight as possible. All right, that's the least detrimental that we can get. So first off is water. So if you drink more water, there's a hormone that gets the antidiuretic hormone, or vasopressin, I think it's called, is the hormone that tells your body to retain water. So if we drink a lot of water, that hormone is reduced or another hormone is released. I can't 100% remember, but I know that hormone plays a really big role in water retention and regulates water retention.
Right.
So we aim for about usually just kind of based off their body weight. If you're 90 kilos, we'll have about 9 liters. 100 kilos, have about 10 liters a day of water.
Fuck. A
You have a
day.
lot.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine what it would take to drink that much.
It's very,
Jesus,
very difficult.
Yeah.
And so essentially you drink the water, and you're over about a week, you'll notice that, you already start peeing a lot, but you'll notice you won't retain any water.
Right.
You'll drink, it's out. It's gone. So that antidiuretic hormone in the body is very highly present in low presence. So it's a diuretic hormone that's probably highly present. I don't know if it's just a lack of antidiuretic hormone or just a high presence of the diuretic hormone. Anyway, the body starts to release a lot of water, and this only lasts for about less than 24 hours.
Right.
So you'll drink as much as you can, and then you'll taper off super quick. So essentially you'll half the water before your body will still release it, and then the next day you'll only have a quarter of that. So normally if it's 10 liters, you have 5 liters, then 1 liter.
Right.
All right. And you normally do that before 12. So the 1 liter, kind of like trickling it down, allows that hormone to still be present, but allows you to drop more water than you're intaking.
Okay.
So you lose a fair bit of water. Next one is salt. Salt helps retain water, so you usually reduce salt levels so we don't have the bloating. So you increase salt levels, then decrease salt levels.
Yep.
You taper the salt levels down. That produces another hormone that helps release. When you have a high sodium intake, it helps release the sodium. Then you reduce it, and then the sodium output keeps going, and you have low levels of salt in the body, which then is a bit of a mixture of dehydration and low levels of salt.
Yep.
You can play with fiber levels. So fiber holds water as well.
Okay.
So it holds it in the digestive tract. So you want to have a low fiber diet coming in. So you taper fiber out.
Right. Okay.
And then glycogen stores. So 1 molecule of glycogen holds 3 molecules of water. So then you would want to reduce carbohydrate intake to then reduce the water retention that glycogen holds.
So you managed to get this athlete in a water cut down. I mean, obviously you had diet related changes too, but you went down 17 kilos.
Yeah. So after all those variables, there's a method to timing all that quite well. So that, and then usually by the end, if we have any more to lose at that. So I'll do it in levels. If it's only have to lose 5%, you probably wouldn't utilize all those methods. But you can, for someone for 10%, weight. We had to utilize all of it. And so if there's any more left, then we have to resort to trying to sweat the rest out. Normally by this stage, this person is in a very critical state. They're very dehydrated. They're very, and especially if you have to try and draw more water out, especially when you force water out,
Yeah.
that person really does suffer, and you have to monitor their vitals really closely, because you can end up in hospital, you can end up dead. So
Wow.
we usually onboard pretty closely if we're ever going to pull the plug on it. And so this is reserved for very, very experienced lifters and for people who have done water cuts before, maybe a smaller one,
Yeah.
and then done the next one, because they're going to realize how actually painful it is. If you ever felt what hunger's like if you're really hungry and all you want to do is eat, there is nothing more worse than thirst. Being thirsty. The urge to drink is really strong.
Yeah.
And you don't know that because you never get to a point where you're that thirsty. You get a point to thirst and then you enjoy your drink, enjoy having a drink. But being dehydrated, where you've lost that much weight because of water loss, the urge, your natural urge to drink is far outweighs hunger. If you haven't eaten for a day and you're starving, that's like on a scale, it's like a 2 compared to a 10, what thirst is like.
Wow.
You need the urge to drink is really high. Anyway, but that's quite understandable.
Yeah. Holy shit! It sounds like torture.
It's It's bad.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't recommend this for anyone, and I rarely practice this with anyone anymore. So it's a lot less these days. I don't think I have practiced with anyone in nearly 4 or 5 years, because there are smarter approaches, and this only had been reserved for very elite athletes. I've only ever done it for people who either breaking all-time records or competing in pro raw, which then added another level of difficulty as well. So for those individuals, depending on the weigh-in times, then we have also the refeed period, which is very short.
Yeah.
You've got 24 hours. So the goal is to then restore everything that they have possibly lost, or that they have lost, and get them to a point where they can perform. Now, for 10%, that's really hard to do. So usually the first thing you need, the most important thing, is you need to get your water levels back up. So usually you're spending the first time getting minerals, electrolytes, and fluid in. Second most important thing is once you got to the water in, getting enough water in is going to take, so usually the average to get enough water in, whatever body weight you lost, you have to then drink that by 150% per liter. So if it's like you lost 5 kilos, you have to have 7.5 liters.
Right.
Okay. And to drink that will take, for him, he had to have at least 10 liters of water, and 10, if not more. And if anything, that's probably going to take him a couple of days to get, to have that much water come in, put all that water weight back on and all that stuff. So we have to prioritize drinking water. So in the first instances, we'll drink water and then get extremely simple carbohydrates in. So things that are very easily digestible, no fats, no protein, don't need it, especially with the amount of carbs you're going to be having. And essentially it's mainly just rice and salt is our main go-to, just rice and salt. And you can normally, if you just have rice and salt, you can eat a lot of it, because you're going to probably want to get, depending on the individual size. So for 100 kilo lifter, you're going to be wanting, 8 to 10 grams per kilo of body weight. So 100 kilos, like 1,000 grams of carbs. And this is what I mean. This normally you'd stretch this over 3-4 days.
So I'm just trying to picture what 1,000 grams of carbs in rice would look. I mean, how many grams of rice would that be?
I'm not saying that this is what you end up having to do, but this is what you have to do to get to a point where your performance levels are high. Yeah. So these are all the absurd targets you got to aim for someone who's going to do such an extreme level of cut. And this is only for him. Okay,
Yeah,
for other
yeah,
people,
yeah.
it's not going to be as much.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the most extreme level.
Yeah, that's unreal.
And this
Yeah.
is why, if I'm doing a diet then refeed phase, I'm refeeding over about 5 days. It takes me 5 days to get to a point where my glycogen stores are full.
Right.
And I'm normally having, so I normally taper. I start about 500-600 grams a day. And usually by the competition, I'm having 1,000 grams of carbs a day. So not only has to have it in one day, but most of that he's not even going to be able to retain all that. So for me to retain, I have to have it over a few days for me to retain that much glycogen stores. So it's just this. It is very difficult to get to a point where he's fully restored. So carbs and glycogen, basically, carbs and water is the main thing there. We probably wouldn't focus on any protein and fats until the end of the day, because the protein and fats are going to blunt digestion rates
Okay.
for water and the carbohydrates. So normally they're spending 8 hours just having water and rice and salt.
Wow. Yeah.
And their electrolytes and all that stuff, and then they can feed on the rest of the stuff. And normally we wouldn't allow. Well, my school of thought has changed, and so then we would load the fats up at the end of the day. But research shown is that fats probably don't play as a bigger role for strength athletes. Performance-wise, it's obviously just mainly the carbohydrates, water, and salt. Okay. So we just mainly focus on that and just get their recommended daily intake of fats by the end of the day, which are going to be anywhere between 0.8 and 1 gram per kilo body weight. So, for someone a 90 kilo lifter, that's probably 65, 70 grams to about 90 grams of carbs, of fats. Which we'll just focus on having at the end of the day. And because there's so much food to get down, fats and protein are going to suppress your ability to eat food. So it all has to be timed. And normally this is timed to the minute, because you only have a certain rate of fluid uptake that your body can handle, and there's a rate of glycogen uptake, which is roughly, I think, from memory, is like roughly 1 gram a minute. Roughly you can take. I can't 100% remember. I think it's about 1 gram a minute, and then fluid is like about 200 to 300 mils every 15 minutes or so. So we have to, and that can change depending on body weight. So we have to base it around your digestion rate and how much time you got and how much you need to get in. So you might not be allowed to have any fats or protein or any real food until very, very late, because it is important that we get that in. Then we still have the next morning and to the day of the competition to try and fill out the rest of that if we've lost anything. So normally the next morning is usually you already lose about 200 grams of glycogen overnight, roughly, depending on the individual's size and stuff like that. So 100 to 200 grams you have to replace first thing in the morning, and then you get to start to actually refill glycogen stores again. So then you'll have to, how much time you have between then and the competition to get the rest of your glycogen store levels up. And you have all of competition to continue to drink carbohydrates, maintain fluid levels up. And it can take I've had people take until the next day, until the morning of the competition, after drinking, trying to get fluids, salts, and carbohydrates in, taking after like 10, 12, 13 liters of water, not until they actually compete before they actually piss a normal color again. So this is, so understand this is, I highly do not recommend this. This is only reserved for elite athletes. And I'm not just saying this to protect my ass or anything. This is actually something I don't recommend. But it is a method that can be used, and mainly don't recommend it because it's very dangerous.
Yeah. So I do want to talk. I do want to talk through the dangers, but I'm interested, having gone through all of that. Are these lifters, how do they feel about their performance? Do they perform up to their potential, and does it feel the same? Or
usually, with all the people who have done up to 10% in body weight, it's mostly there if they followed my schedule.
Right.
And it's a very tough schedule.
Of course.
So the one people who are able to follow it perfectly, most of the time more time than often they can't get it all in. They can't get all, they the usual ones who do follow it. I've had the guy who did the 360. He needed to do the 365. He didn't end up getting the 365, and he actually didn't blame the diet. He said he felt good enough to hit it on the day. I can't remember why he missed that, but he ended up with 345. I had some girls at 2017 Nationals cut down for a weight class, and it was to win the competition is the reason why they want to do it. They wanted to win Nationals.
Right.
I ended up coming second, and her performance was mostly there. I don't remember her performing poorly. She came second, but the gap was a bit big, and I think we missed some thirds that we knew she should have got but didn't quite get.
Right.
She didn't quite fully recover, but they got a substantial number of their performance back.
Yeah.
And then that lesson, she realized she never wanted to do a cut again.
I'm not surprised.
So that, and yeah, so when you're doing it too, depending on how much weight they got to cut, there's a priority. Like, I'd rather reduce water rather than food first. I'd rather leave the carbohydrates in as long as I can, only drop it near the end. So there's you can look at the severity and level that they got to lose, and you can then tailor the program to best suit the best path of least resistance. Some school of thought is people that try to do an overweight cut so they can start to eat and drink earlier.
Yeah.
But I don't think so. I think you're best to come in as tight as you can, because it's not the same as dieting down. So it is better just to, unless you're, like you said, how you said Steffi Cohen was doing it, she's already as lean as she's going to get.
Yeah.
There's no way she's going to make a weight class unless she actually...
Well, this is the problem. Like, you can only lose weight if there's fat there, right? So if you're incredibly lean...
Yeah.
What is the last option?
With all those resources I told you, you can lose 10%, an extra 10%.
So what are the? Is there somebody listening now, right? And they're like, okay, sweet, I'm gonna water cut, right? And they're doing it themselves. Could we just highlight what are the dangers of doing it wrong? So obviously there's the extreme dehydration and death.
Yeah.
I know in boxing they've attributed a lot of brain injuries. It's apparently in the super heavyweights, it's not an issue. But at the lower weight classes, they have attributed a number, or there's a suspicion that a number of brain injuries from knockouts are as a result of extreme water cutting, and basically they haven't got enough water in there, and the padding they normally would have had around their brain wasn't present, and they get cracked in the head, and that's caused brain trauma. So is there any negative implication? Like, could there be significant health risks once you perform? Like, because obviously,
well, you can just look up. I'm just looking up now. Just the symptoms of extreme dehydration. And I know there's different. I can't find. There's a graph somewhere talking about like the percentage of dehydration can result in these possible symptoms, and getting up to 10% plus is like getting like death and possibly like here's like kidney disease, gallstones, hypertension, constipation, depression, muscle cramps, heat exhaustion. Organ failure.
Organ failure.
And so normally what it is that the most dangerous time part of it is normally exposed to the shortest period of time, which is the dehydration.
Right.
If normally they're going to maintain a lot of their weight, they might lose a couple of kilos over the 2-week period that we started, but usually they won't lose too much. We only lose it really in the last 24 to 48 hours.
Right.
When we start to taper everything out and taper out the water, taper all that stuff out. And so usually they might stop drinking water around 12 and they might weigh in at 10. So that's about 20 hours or so of dehydration, which they're normally still hydrated quite hydrated for the first half day, and then normally overnight they get very thirsty.
Yeah.
So usually that whole day is pretty uncomfortable. And so, yeah, that means that we keep the exposure time to the dangerous period the shortest possible.
As narrow as possible, yeah.
And that's probably I'm going to say the best way to get through it. I just don't recommend anyone doing it. It should be just reserved for the absolute elite, and I don't think it should be done at all. I haven't practiced it. I haven't practiced it in a very long time with anyone. We just be smarter with our dieting.
Yeah.
And even with the absolute elite guys now, it's like you just have to diet if you want to be at that elite level. And if you get to a point where you're extremely elite, then that's probably when you can do it. But I mean, like, you're already under 10%, you're like freaking 6% body fat, and you're already 5, 6, 7 kilos heavier than the weight class, and you want to go down and like demolish, the world, then that's probably a time you might need to do it.
Yeah, but that's
at that stage, you're pretty elite. Like most elite, you can just diet.
Yeah.
Normally there's a couple of kilos if you just, like I said, if you're lazy. I've had a couple of athletes who are just lazy at dieting. You just do a couple of kilo cut and refeed. And normally, usually if you do spare of the moment cuts, they perform worse than someone who did a longer water cut and lost more weight. So I can lose 2% for someone who, if you just did a day before, and it's like, I haven't made weight. So they'll go sauna, they'll go lose carbs, and they drop everything they can in one day. Then try to refeed all back. They normally perform worse than someone if I'd lost 5% but had perfectly timed all the nutrition. Because you could get away with just still eating carbohydrates and still having a good diet, fair bit of food coming in, and just do a water cut, and you can lose a fair bit there. And you can even just reduce dietary fiber and sodium levels and still keep food coming in. So at least we still have glycogen stores, but you've reduced the water by a few percent, your body weight by a few percent because of water manipulation. So, yeah, different stages of intensity to do it. The example I used is obviously one that was very extreme.
Yeah, obviously that's on the most extreme end.
Yeah. And you want to leave all the sauna and wet sweatsuits and stuff to the very last minute.
Yeah.
So we normally use that because I had practiced this a fair bit with quite a few elite athletes. I knew exactly what weight they needed to be at various times of the day to be ready for the morning of the weight cut, because then usually after a big water cut, they wouldn't lose any more over sleep. So we would have to then make sure that you'd only lose about 0.5% of your body weight over sleep by that stage. Normally you'll lose about 1 to 2%. But they only lose about 0.5%, maybe 1% if they still had more room. So we have to ensure that they've got to be 60 kilos and they have to be 60.6 the night before.
Right.
So then we can time the weight loss over that period of time. We've had people who are so dehydrated that even having a shower put weight on. Their skin absorbed fluid.
Holy shit. That's incredible.
And they put weight back on.
Wow, that is incredible.
So you got to the point where we just stop recommending
Yeah, it's insane. That's absolutely insane.
But yeah, again, don't recommend it.
Fuck. Yeah,
I can't say that enough. I don't want someone on here listening who's new at lifting trying to do a water cut.
Yeah.
You'll hate powerlifting forever.
Fucking hell.
Especially with your early experiences of doing it.
Definitely.
All right. But yeah, actually just say all this information is for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah, it's all highly prescriptive. You always have to go and consult somebody if you want to do any of the stuff we talk about anyway. Mm-hmm. It's never the recommendation to, even when it comes to the lifting advice, it's never the recommendation to do it on your own. Mm-hmm. Ideally, you obviously go and see a coach or get an expert. Yeah.